It's a bird.
It's a plane.
Two sick puppies. Two tough guys with concrete for brains.
Live from New York. It's Saturday night. No, taped on night like you listen to this crazy show. It's Friday night. Close enough. Yeah. I did different from what I said. Because I did that in the 80s. It was a taped program.
Well, he didn't do it in
that
the 80s.
we actually did in the 80s. We didn't actually broadcast it, but that didn't mean that we didn't actually do the show. It's a very important distinction.
That's like saying, oh, I was drafted for Nam, but I didn't actually go. I was in Nam, but I didn't go.
No, I was in Nam, but I just didn't serve.
Right.
Oh, maybe.
Like, what?
I got there a little late.
Bush.
Anyway.
What are we doing?
13
video
games to...
This video is 13 video games to remake, and you're probably going to know that better than us because you probably looked at the title of the video. We didn't. We're just sitting down.
We forgot to look
Because, you know, the number one thing I want to make
down.
an entirely important point about
The cameraman's being a smartass.
distractions in this room. The important thing is, one, not to have distractions when you're filming these. And the second one is to always have a script. Otherwise, it just ends up being a rambling bunch of nonsense, and we failed. So,
But what if that's what we want, is a rambling bunch of nonsense?
and that's why we have Alex as a cameraman, because he makes these very good points.
2, 1, eat, go. Video games and scene. 5 for you, 10 for me. Alternating.
We'll be doing them 1 to 2.
1 to 2. All right. So video games to remake. Colton, you are first. And quit doing the distraction thing with the hands.
The first one I have written down that needs to remake is Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Now, I've always loved the Elder Scrolls ever since I got Oblivion more recently. I got Morrowind, started playing it, and the problem is that the graphics are incredibly far behind.
They are. It's very dated now, but the game itself has some interesting gameplay dynamics that they've gotten rid of in later games. My biggest pet peeve is being only able to sell stolen goods to fences, which limits the game in terms of being able to, you know, resell your stuff and
also
pick up money.
Realisticability.
But it's just not realistic.
Realistic ability.
They don't have a complete list of everything that's been stolen. Or if I turn around and steal a fork from this house and try and sell it down the street, there hasn't even been time for anybody to report it stolen yet. So
And who's going to report a fork stolen? It's like, hey, there's a fork missing. I'll just get another one.
I lost a wooden fork, so I'm sorry. So it sounds pretty petty, but
then
the
beyond
other
that,
thing,
though, more things later on, as the Elder Scrolls goes on, the spells go down. I'm always a mage. Always. Period. And in the Morrowind, there's like a million spells that you can get. There's even one to fly.
yeah.
I'm sure you remember that. You always used it.
Yeah, when you get the fly spell in Morrowind and then you cheat to allow yourself to fly almost indefinitely, it opens up so many new areas and you can just explore everything. And you can do it fairly early in the game, which is impressive. The biggest problem that Morrowind had, though, was the links and the storytelling were not protected by unkillable characters like in the later games, so you'd have to fix that. But mostly it's the graphics that just need to be updated, and then the story could, of course, be expanded because you have a lot more memory to work with today.
And you make it easier. I don't know if anybody out there has played it, but I always complain about this now. But if you play Oblivion and Skyrim, they're so much easier to play. And if you wind up going back to Morrowind, when you start off, you cannot enter any kind of dungeon at all. If you do, it'll kill you.
They didn't have auto-leveling exactly figured out, so if you went into something too early, there's a vampire den that you can get suckered into really early in the game, and you have to be 30 levels higher to be able to handle that dungeon. But we're moving on.
Are we?
Yeah, we're done. You're done, that's all you get. My first one to remake on the new systems, and do it in an exciting style, I would hope, is Gex. A lot of people aren't going to remember Gex at all. The last one, I believe, was PS2.
Yeah,
and
it was like
a
90
3D
something.
version that was kind of a Spyro ripoff. And you got to explore and you did platform jumping and things like that. But the early Gexes, it's a kind of a leading semi-open world that has doorways, and each doorway then leads you to a different television or movie type universe. And it's a lot of references, and I don't know what word I'm looking for.
I
So I'll
think
just edit that out.
it's a lot of something. But the French call a certain je ne sais quoi.
I don't know what. Each world is unique, and each world is based on either a television or movie, so that it has that different aspect of it, so that everything, even Gex himself, sort of changes clothes or whatever to fit into it. And if you redo it in 3D and do it as a third person over the shoulder, first person, or even as a small platform gamer in the same style right now as the Skylanders, but be able to open that up to all the different referenced universes, and you change just enough that you don't have to get the licenses for them all. My second one in this group is Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey. Not so much the Oddworlds that came later. The idea was to make Oddworld a running series. They only ended up making 3 games, and the third one was a 3D thing that didn't fit with the other 2, but it was still fun. You're basically a bounty hunter, and you're using bees to shoot people and stuff. So it's all about changing expectations, a little like Gex in that regard. The first game was basically a side screen, back and forth, a scroller where you just solve puzzles and have to get to different levels. But so unique in the way it was done, the presentation, and the idea they had for the run. But for whatever reason, as the systems progressed, we went from PS1 to PS2, it kind of got lost, and then that last bounty hunter thing, I think I played it on the Xbox. It was okay, but it wasn't great compared to the other shooters that were starting to come out, like Halo. And it makes a...
I think even Call of Duty and Medal of Honor were around that time.
We're starting to take off. So it didn't actually have a place where it was trying to fit then, how it was starting to turn. But as a 3D over-the-shoulder platforming style, again, much in the same way that Gex was, only in that weird universe where you've got a guy who farts, basically, to solve puzzles and eats unusual things, or can clone himself, or just crazy ways to solve puzzles. That's the part that I would like to have saved from it, that I would like to see redone. And if the people that currently own Oddworld, you're not going to tell me. I don't know.
I wouldn't know it.
We can look it up, but we're lazy.
Like, does anyone even own Oddworld? It's like, maybe the company might have went under. A lot of them have done that.
Well, they either went under, or they got bought out by somebody that bought out somebody that sold, and the back lot, they ended up in a box.
Which at this point, I don't know, you might not want to go
So it's all owned by Disney.
Remember Duke Nukem?
Yeah, and that's the big warning for this whole video, is that we don't want something like Duke Nukem, where
Forever.
it took so long to do and so many people had a hand in it that it ended up not being what was promised. Duke Nukem should have been about 5 years earlier, when about 2 people before were working on it, and it might have fit in then, and just got outdated really quickly after that. But we're back to Colton's list. This would be number 4 overall. This is the second one.
So my next one was Silent Hill. Mostly because I always liked it. I always remember watching him play it when I was much younger. Mo was...
That wasn't a cross. I was just saying how little you were.
The Silent Hill games were always pretty fun. They were always like that one thing you always wished Resident Evil is now. And even now the Silent Hill games have kind of gone away from that.
That's what he wants to stress here, I think, when he's talking about Silent Hill. He's talking about the first 2.
Yeah.
Everything that was made after that, they got distracted. And they are technically still making Silent Hills within the past year and a half anyway. But talking about those first two.
Yeah.
I agree. It's not on my list.
I probably should have
strangely.
put the first two on there, but I just put Silent Hill. I figured you'd know what I meant, or somebody would know what I mean.
But I think, I don't want to take away from what you're talking about, since it was yours to bring up.
Well, it's like the premise of it. You go to a town, you can't see almost anything. The entire screen, pretty much, is almost constantly being fogged over. You can't see more than a few feet in front of your
It's
character.
fog or darkness.
Right, fog or darkness. And that difficulty in seeing, not only that, but Pyramid Head, which I think is one of the enemies that everybody knows and recognizes, was one of the most terrifying aspects of that game. That's like this. It's like you have to like make the so like that. Then
Well, it's got to come down this
It's
way,
like
and
this.
then it's got to come in from the sides. But
that sort of.
But the head really isn't the thing. It's the weapon being drugged behind.
Right,
And
that-
the idea that even though he looks like he's having a heck of a time dragging it along, he can pick it up and swing it faster than you can
With
breathe.
one arm.
With one arm.
And you can't even fight him. There's rarely any bullets in there. You just had to
There-
run.
Yeah, your weapons are limited, and he's virtually indestructible anyway, so running is your only option. Solving a puzzle or figuring something out before he shows up is important. But the more important part of the foggy and very, very dark situations is that they used sound in the early games. A little radio that would indicate when something was getting closer. It would start fizzing a little more and bring up more static. And that was how you knew that something was getting close to you. So, like, oh shit, I don't know where they're coming from. See, I can spin right off of that. Of that.
Oh, that works, huh?
On my list, I have to go out of order. Resident Evil 1 and 2.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to make a really good horror game, stop making the Resident Evil 4, 5, 6. That just 3 is a transition one. Don't care if you like it or not. I mean, it's just there. It just is. But the first two, as bad as they are to go back and play mechanically, they are really good in terms of slow story development and spookiness, and drawing you into this idea of running, when to fight, when not to fight, how to manage your inventory. They were a couple of the first games that I really played that had to do that, where I worried about when am I going to be able to save, where am I going to be able to save. I'm going to have to save this typewriter ribbon to save at some point. I'm going to have to save this ammo because there's going to be a bigger creature down the hall. And then trying to get the story into it as well. The first one was actually a pretty hard game. If you go back and get a chance to play it, like PS1, or if you find some sort of emulator to go and play the original game, not the remastered stuff, you'll find that it's pretty difficult to get past the first 2 levels of the house there, where you're just kind of in the mansion and you haven't really gotten to any of the story.
I wanted to say, you actually can play this now.
I'm sure you can.
Online on Xbox 360 that I have, there is a advertisement to buy the original Resident Evil.
Pretty soon, just about any game will be available for download purchase in some way or another. Once they figure out the royalty situation, who gets the money. And again, we're talking about a lot of these companies went out of business, so trying to figure out who owns what and who's going to get a percentage of the money from selling, Miss Pac-Man Goes to Mars or whatever the title of the game is. It was owned by 3 or 4 people, and now everybody's going to get a share of this money. Once all that gets figured out, virtually every game you can think of, and one I'm looking forward to is Crystal Castles. It was on the Atari 2600, but it was terrible. Commodore 64 was a little better, but it was an arcade game that was just awesome. They gotta look that up. There's a lot of arcade games that I would like to see redone, but that's not on this list. We were talking about Resident Evil 1 and 2 before you distracted us, you stinking creature.
What I do?
Yeah. Get your brain off me, you damn dirty ape.
You can talk.
So I'll go right into a computer one, though, since I brought up the Commodore 64.
I know where this is going.
No, you don't. This is way after the Commodore 64. The Age of Mythology game. Age of Empires, they've had 3. And yeah, he's looking because one of the boxes is behind me, I think.
I just thought it is back there.
Age of Empires has started to get away. When they did Age of Empires 3, it got away from some of the tactical ideas because it immersed it more in strategy, and they wanted more versus play and everything. Age of Mythology, in introducing gods, introducing strange units and mythical units, and of course everything back then had cheat codes, and the Age of Empires, Age of Mythology series was excellent with its cheat codes, so you could jump right into a game at virtually any level and take on a huge army if you wanted to really see what the game could do. But Age of Mythology is the one I would like to see remade, using the modern amount of memory and detail you could in the sculpture, and being able to maybe zoom in, zoom out, being able to control things like the morality of your empire, as opposed to just a straight up fighting one empire versus another, and having bonuses based on how well you were doing in the eyes of your god. Are you being a good warrior for Ares? Are you attacking people every chance you get? Or are you a little too passive and you're building things up and he needs to slap you down a little bit? That adds a huge dynamic, kind of combining some of the ideas of the black and white series.
Right. I was going to say, if you wanted a game like this, something, the closest thing they have now is black and white 2. A lot of the newer computers can't play it. In fact, mine's having trouble.
I think black and white 2 may have come out before Age of Mythology, but combining the two
Black
and then
and white,
making...
the original one might have, but the second one I think was after.
I don't know the timeline again. Look in the comments. I'm sure somebody will detail that for you. Maybe Cole will look it up, put it on there.
I might if I feel like it.
But the idea of that turn-based, not even turn-based, it's a rolling dynamic universe, and getting it on these bigger systems or more powerful computers now, so that you could pretty much do an entire planet if you let it run long enough. You could colonize the planet, and you could have multiple factions, and multiplayer would be almost limitless in its potential. You may have to have different servers, different planetary styles, but the options, I'm sure, would be excellent. So that's one I would really like to see redone, if it could be redone right. And that's 2 again for me. So
I'm back to me and my third one. What is this? I lost count now. Are we on 7 total?
7 overall?
7 overall, because I did 1 last time. It was 4th, and then you did 2, and I did 1.
Yes, the 1, 1, 2, 1, 1.
1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1.
1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1. No, 1 plus 1 plus 2. Okay, nobody gets that one. Okay.
If you do,
Moving on.
golf clap.
Get a clue. I'd like to buy a foul, please. Okay.
Number 3 on mine, number 7 overall. I'll try this again. Was Battlefront 1 and 2. Again, like his Resident Evil, when I first did this, I don't think they've released it yet, but I think there is one where you can buy these 2, mostly remastered, for the new systems. Well, not new, but 360.
I would assume so.
I think there are.
I don't want to assume.
But one of the ones I've been most looking forward to, if they make it, if they get off their asses and do it, was the 3rd one.
Have you said your piece there?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I'm going to go with a Mario 64. The Nintendo 64 launched with one of the greatest Mario games ever. A platform jumper, 3D world. Great color. Of course, the graphics look weird today, but it was cartoony anyway. It's a cartoony universe, and you were able to play in it, and it had an excellent level of difficulty. Something that you could beat with a lot of practice, but that you couldn't just roll over, especially if you were, too old to master controls like me, or too young to know what a controller was, like Colton at the time. Maybe he knew what a controller was. It was something you
Played around with and didn't
put in
want
your
to throw.
mouth, and I don't know, phrasing. Anyway, I'm not going to say too much about Mario 64 because I think it's pretty obvious that Nintendo would like to redo that somehow. And the biggest problem is they've pretty much given up on their consoles. So if you're going to see something like that, it's going to be on the small scale. My second one, again, dated graphics, Clay Fighter. The last one, I believe, was on the 64.
Yeah, Clay Fighter
Again,
64.
go back to Clay Fighter 64, not as good. You had to go all the way back to the original. Ichabod Clay, Bad Mr. Frosty. And there was an Elvis character, with hair flicking people with his hair.
An Elvis character.
It was the craziness of the attacks that made these games fun. And the fact that they were clay meant that you had much less parent animosity toward the violence that was depicted in the game. Because this is about the same time as Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter were getting pretty nasty. Especially Mortal Kombat was being slammed, and Sega was taking a little bit of the bad boy heat, which actually helped their sales, so they were happy for that.
Well, it's the same thing for Grand Theft Auto when they were starting to get problems. Their sales skyrocketed.
Yeah. This case, Clay Fighter was a way to have fighting games that you didn't have to worry about the violence too much, because it's just clay beaten up on clay, and there's no blood, so as long as you know that, it's just totally fun, and you're able to do silly things like the hair attack, or like a snowman throwing carrots at you, and crazy stuff like that. And if they just stick with some of those original crazy characters and then add some other new things, references to shows and things that have happened since, I think Clay Fighter could be a great franchise. Just remake the first one. You could even keep a lot of the same dynamics, but throw in maybe a little more modern references. I think it's your turn now.
Yeah, it was your 2, wasn't it? Anyway,
This would be 10 overall.
we already mentioned a couple things earlier, so I'm just going to go ahead and skip down. I mentioned Grand Theft Auto. I have Grand Theft Auto San Andreas on here. This doesn't have to be just San Andreas. It could also be Vice City. It could also be the third one.
Well, I think there are specific reasons why, if I know what you're going for, that you're talking about San Andreas should be remade. So just focus on that.
So if I just focus on that and the specific things on Grand Theft Auto, first off, comparing it to the newer one, well, not newest one, I haven't played the 5th one, but the 4th one had a few radio stations, but they weren't all that good. The radio stations seemed to be kind of piss poor. They only had like 4 or 5 songs. It's all about the music, man. But so the music had a problem in it. In Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, there was all kinds of stations. There was like 2 rock stations. There was a country station. There was a couple rap stations. But now the newer one was like all rap stations. There was two talk stations, 1 rock station. Only played like 3 songs. Beyond that, you also had the other stuff where you could actually customize your character slightly. You were given, what was his name? Carl Johnson, something like that. I can't remember his name now, but I think it was Carl.
I don't remember. It's been forever.
I'm pretty sure it was Carl. So you were given Carl, and he was basically already created for you. He was a hood guy in a gang, well, going back to a gang. But throughout the entire game, whatever you did, you increased your skill in. So you could drive around, and the more driving you did, you increase your skill. If you lifted weights, you'd increase your strength. You'd have all this different stuff, and it would affect how you were. If you could breathe underwater, or not breathe underwater, but swim better. You could hold your breath longer. You could lift more. You do more damage with melee weapons, that kind of thing. So that's something else I'd love to see again in Grand Theft Auto, the ability to actually change your character, not just facially or visually, but also, what's the word I'm looking for? More physically, more usefulness. And then also the thing we keep talking about was the cheats now. No one ever uses cheats anymore. No one has them. It seems to be a forgotten art. In San Andreas, there was hundreds of thousands of cheats, it felt like. You could do whatever the hell you wanted. What?
Just comment.
Wasn't hundreds of thousands. I'm exaggerating a lot. But if you walked into any
More
of
than
those...
5. It's hundreds of thousands.
I'm a kid. What do you expect? I exaggerate everything. But anyway, there was a lot of You know, I mean, what's my place now? Thanks. Distractions. So there were a lot of cheats for it. And if you go on to some of the internet sites, they actually have a whole list of these things, and it takes up like 4 or 5 pages, maybe more. I haven't been on one in a long time.
I can remember printing out codes for the Grand Theft Autos, and for San Andreas, it's like 6 pages of codes and stuff that you can print out. And that's not even counting. Remember the old Game Sharks where you used to be able to type in override codes from programming and things, and it would just be pages and pages. A lot of work to type those in, but they increased replayability considerably on old games.
And then the difference between, again, San Andreas and the fourth one, you couldn't get into planes. They were there, but you couldn't get into them.
It's always about the planes with him.
Music and planes. I have very specific things I look for in games, you know? Like, if you can't enjoy the world, what's the point of creating it?
Yeah. Well, not being able to fly the planes is pretty frustrating. Although I think they had a cheat code for in one of the new games.
They might have, I don't know.
Where you just get one, or maybe it's just a helicopter. I think there's an attack
you can fly
helicopter in 4,
helicopters, yeah,
right?
in 4.
Okay. But no planes.
Yeah.
Which everybody wants to, take a 747 up and crash it into a... No, we shouldn't talk about
Yeah, you might want to talk about that.
Back away from that. That's going down a bad rabbit hole.
That's why I think San Andreas didn't have it, because it was so close to 9/11. But I can kind of understand, or not San Andreas, but Grand Theft Auto 4.
Grand Theft Auto 4, having been created afterwards, maybe they were afraid that people would make that connection. They didn't want you flying 747.
But it's not like there was going to be an achievement in game saying slam this into a skyscraper. I guess there could have been if there was some guy who had a sense of humor. But anyway.
Let's get into a sensitive subject, but someday that will be an achievement in the video game. I'm going to skip the next one. I did have Midnight Club on the list. They have made some other Midnight Club games, but the first 2 were really good, not realistic driving games at all. They were just fun. Point A, point B, inside. What they were, though, were pretty realistic cities. Modifications of existing cities, particularly Manhattan and New York and downtown London. But I'm going to skip that.
No, speaking of that, though, they almost have Horizon. Forza Horizon was close. Not exact, it still had racing and everything.
Forza Horizon is much better dynamics, and much closer to physics, and less realistic. Well, they have realistic driving tracks, but they don't let you race on regular non-tracks. I mean, everything you race, other than Forza Horizon, which was a made-up area, everything they make you race in the other Forzas are legitimate tracks.
Right.
Horizon is more fun, open world style.
I think it's probably why I liked it, because it reminded me of Midnight Club.
I guess it kind of had that.
It kind of does. It's the closest thing you've had in a while.
So if you take Forza Horizon and then you put it into
California,
realistic cities, known cities, and let you drive in real downtown, Chicago, New York, LA, London, Peking. Okay.
I am.
The one that's more important to me is Jade Cocoon.
This one.
It's people call it a Pokemon ripoff. It's that sort of develop your monster and have the monster fight for you. So think that, but then each of your monsters can interbreed, if you will, but it's not really breeding, it's more merging. Fusion technique.
They have to do this because children may play this game.
Yes, we can't think of procreation. We must think of magical merging. Which is strange,
considering Pokemon actually breed, but we'll get to that in a minute.
No, we're going to talk about Pokemon. Jade Cocoon was a much more fun way of trying to create your own monsters and end up with, I don't know, maybe there's like 100 monsters in the game, but there's thousands of ways to combine them and make new things. If you think of games like Little Alchemy or Chemistry 101 or whatever it's called, those just silly apps where you can mix two things together and get a new thing, and then you got to mix that with something else, and eventually you end up with hundreds of different things from the real world that are made out of simple things. You start with like 4 elements and you end all up together. Think of that, but with monsters, and then being able to combine them more. And with the memory of today's systems, you could have the worlds that you're exploring with these monsters be even better. The abilities of the monsters being more dynamic and diverse, because, you know, in the original Jade Cocoon and the sequel that followed, you only had a few attacks that your monsters could really learn, and they all kind of looked the same after a while. But the ability to merge those monsters together and create new ones was incredibly fun and challenging to try and hit the first thing. So I think in today's society, where we all want to hit the achievement of getting, you know, 1,000 different monsters in your arsenal would be just incredible fun. I think it'd be great for, you know, adults and kids. The Jade Cocoon idea, that series, doesn't have to be, you know, limited. It doesn't have to be the kid version. And if you combined it with a Skylander type idea, you know, you could even do an action figure type thing with it. But just Jade Cocoon by itself, reborn on the new systems, I think would be excellent.
I think the biggest problem people have with that is it might have the same problem as one of the earlier ones you said, where people just see it as more kiddish.
Yeah.
Because I've seen a lot of similar games like this on Facebook and on different things like that. Like he was talking about Alchemy God. It was what I was thinking of. Start off with 4 elements: earth, wind, fire, air.
Yeah.
Or earth, wind, fire, water.
Earth, wind, fire. Earth, wind, and fire.
Air.
Air wasn't there the day that you made the record.
Earth.
I think I got a chuckle.
My last one, as he already knows, is Mech Assault 2.
Really?
So Mech Assault 2.
I tickle myself.
Phrasing.
And him.
Phrasing. So
It's not that bad. Phrasing.
the original
We
Mech
have
Assault.
much worse.
Phrasing. No, I'm just saying it. Alright.
I know,
So,
now he's just saying things.
the original Mech Assault wasn't all that good. It was basically just put you in a mech, run around, shoot things, don't get killed.
It was like this.
That's his. So, you were constantly in a mech. The second Mech Assault allowed you to be one person that was like this big that could run around and get into multiple mechs. And you'd be able to change, you'd be even able to take over your enemy mechs to be able to get into it. But again, it was on the original Xbox. I think it might also have been for the
Hey,
PlayStation 2.
you're getting the original ones. So there was the Mech Assault, there was the Mech Warrior, and if you get confused, Mech Warrior was the straight up just messing around in the mechs, and then Mech Assault sort of twisted that a little bit. And Mech Assault 2 is what he's really talking about.
Yeah. I said Mech Assault 2.
Yeah, I know you said it right, but it's confusing to people who may have lived through that transition.
Right. Well, Mech Warrior, you have that big controller around you, and you have a little fun with it. I actually seen it once. Kind of cool. But I'm getting off
The
topic.
original, yes.
Yeah, the original. The
It's
really
a
big
nice
controller.
controller.
I wanted that one to play with. I saw it in a used game store at one point. I was pushing all the buttons. But anyway, I'm getting off topic again. Stop it. Distractions. Anyway.
Joyous.
So, with Mech Assault, you were able to steal Mech Assault 2, Mech Warrior. You were able to steal your enemies' mechs by using this exosuit they gave you to root them out of it, or damage to root them out of it, then get into it. And they had versus modes for it, and they had all this stuff, so you could still wind up putting it online, still being able to make it versus online, but just to have your own separate story. I don't know if they'd make a remake of this or make a sequel. Either one would be good, because the graphics are pretty bad. Because the original was actually for the original Xbox, and that's 2 systems ago, now with the Xbox One.
And it really is a great game. And the idea of it is even better if you expanded it beyond just the Mech Warrior, Mech Knight universe. You'd be taking it into maybe even a Transformer Robotech type universe idea,
That'd be good.
where you could
Robotech.
have some sort of transforming mechs, and the idea that you can get out of the one you're in and get into a better one when you need it in a fight, or one that just has better specifics to what you need. Like maybe it's not more powerful, but it's more maneuverable. It's got flight. It can transform into something you need. These kind of things would make great replayability and give you maybe huge maps where you had to have a certain mech to access a certain area, and that would allow for tons of replayability. And of course then the option for online versus play, even though we don't give a darn about social games, the online versus for a mech game is unlimited.
But another thing for Mech Assault, though, something else that he was talking about, you could also kind of combine it with the old idea of, remember, Armored Core, especially the second one that we have, where you could
Customizability of Armored Core combined with then the Mech Warrior system could make the ultimate mech game. In fact, it could be absolute Warcraft killer of an MMORPG if you really wanted to do it that way.
And imagine the versus modes. You'd be able to
it's
create
a
all these different
lot
mechs and running back.
A lot of messy programming, but might be worth it for somebody out there.
Oh,
That's
I wouldn't even care if it was
the
an
Price
indie game.
Industries gaming company takes credit for the game that you will now see next year. No, the last two I had on here were the Myst Ribbon series. I think just redo Myst and make it a 3D first-person adventure. You could throw in a little more action if you want, because God knows it's boring as hell, but it's just one of the most beautiful and beautifully imagined sci-fi stories that needs to be repeated in some form. Because playing it right now and going back and playing it on old systems, because heck, I won't even play on any of my computers. I don't know what you'd have to do to try and get it compatible.
Go like to Windows XP.
You'd have to find it online and actually download it directly from somebody who's converted it.
Maybe I'll find it on Steam.
Pain in
I'll
the
find
butt.
it.
And the other is Metal Gear Solid. With as much as the Metal Gear series has done in expanding,
Metal Gear Rising sucks.
Metal Gear Rising is kind of an offshoot. I don't even consider it part of Metal Gear. It's kind of off on its own. It's kind of a fun idea. It's kind of a fun game, but it really doesn't need to be in the mainstream story of Metal Gear. But the first game, the things that they put in that game that really drew everyone's attention to Metal Gear in the first place should be revisited. That game could be completely remastered, not just redone graphically like it has been on the collection discs, but completely redone as a first-person or third-person over-the-shoulder shooter and adventure game in the Splinter Cell Conviction style. If you could imagine Splinter Cell Conviction play style with the story of Metal Gear, the first Metal Gear Solid. I mean, that should be on a plateau, you know. That should be on a pedestal somewhere if somebody can do that. So I think that's everything.
Well, there was one that I thought about when you were talking, though. Just one. There's always one. He gets two, I get one. It's the way we go.
There's just one more thing.
There's one more thing I gotta understand. But really, though, Vampire Masquerade. I've been wanting to play this game for a while.
It's a vampire game.
It's on Steam, and it's based off of an old pen and pencil game like D&D.
Vampire the Masquerade.
Right, Vampire Masquerade.
You got to throw the in there. It's Werewolf the Gathering, Vampire the Masquerade. I'm forgetting something, but yeah.
Sure you are.
It's like Mummy the Dusty. I don't know.
But from what I've heard, everyone seems to like it. I've never played it, but I would love to see it redone on the consoles. Just be able to run around in an open world environment as a vampire, turning people, doing everything. It's kind of something I always wanted for Elder Scrolls as well. To be able to expand and get your own storyline as a werewolf or as a vampire, to be able to create your own coven or pack as a werewolf. just the freedom of an open world is what I would really want in almost every game, really. But I'm greedy, so.
So basically, you just want to be undead.
Sort of.
That's what you're saying. You want to be an MMORPG as an undead in a more realistic universe.
Let's put it this way: if I could be a demon in an MMORPG, I would.
So you want Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the MMORPG. Yes, so that's what we're saying here. There's an Angel, the video game.